very excited today to have Angie Tibbetts on with us. She is a coworker of mine. I've worked with her at Herren Project for about 4 years now, right, Ange?
Almost.
And she's awesome, and I think she's going to be able to convey a lot of really great information for you guys today. Just a couple of housekeeping issues. If you are on Facebook Live and you have a question, we are taking questions throughout the entire hour, so just throw them out there. We will try to get to them all. So if you're on Facebook Live, just put your questions right in the comment section and they will get to us. If you are on Zoom, put your questions, comments right in the Q&A box, not the chat box, the Q&A box. If you put them in the chat box, everybody will be able to see it, but the question and answer box goes just to us, and we will be able to field them from there. Please refrain from putting any identifying information in there if you can. This is not confidential. We will try not to disclose any if there's any put in there, but just so you're aware, this is not a confidential, Zoom. So whatever you put in there will be potentially read out loud. So we don't want to out anybody that wants to be anonymous. So anyhow, I'm Kristin Young. I am the clinical director of Herren Project here for our hour of Lunch and Learn, and I'm going to let Ange explain to you who she is, and then we'll talk a little bit about what the topic is for today.
Thank you, Kristin. So I am Angie. I am the recovery coordinator for Herren Project. I've been here for almost 4 years. I am in long-term recovery myself, coming up on 10 years, May 11th. I started working in treatment 2 years after I've been clean. And been loving doing it. I was, like I said, I came to Herren Project 4 years ago. I started off as more like the face, the gate, we like to call it, the gateway keeper, where I was the first point of contact and delegated all calls and tasks to my coworkers. And eventually grew into placing people and coordinating treatment, sober living, recovery coaches, and all that fun stuff. So I'm more behind the scenes at the Herren Project, collecting all statements and information, developing relationships with facilities and clients and recovery coaches. So yeah, I do a lot, but I'm behind the scenes doing it all like a little ninja. I don't know what else to say. I think that
that's good. That's good.
Covers it.
Yeah. So you're basically the manager. So if your loved ones do reach out to Herren Project, Angie is the one that sort of oversees what happens when they reach out to us. So I wanted to have you on today, Ange, because I think you have an absolute wealth of knowledge when it comes to not only the logistics of how to get somebody into treatment, but also to how to move somebody from not wanting help to at least being open to discussions about recovery. Right. And I think your personal experience is really important when it comes to that, and your professional experience. I think those two for you work hand in hand, because you work some serious magic for us every day. And I think that's why I think you have a really good, interplay of both of those things. So do you want to start off by telling your story? Would that make sense?
Sure.
That'd be awesome.
Sure. So, my story isn't really unique. I used and got clean where I lived. I started using due to early childhood traumas. It seemed really attractive to me. My mom was a very young mom, and that's her way of like her reprieve, and it looked really attractive to me. I considered myself an adult in the household. I was treated like an adult and ran the house right alongside with my mom. So I only thought it was fair that I try to indulge too. But my side effects weren't really like my mom's, right? My mom could put it down. My mom could use it to relax and like take a load off, where like I didn't ever put it down. And for a while, I went through this manipulating, lying, cheating, stealing, do whatever I needed to do to be able to get what I needed when I needed it. Men are a huge part of my story. I've seen how much they took advantage of my mom, and I started doing that to them. And I started figuring out how to master it and like putting the guys to work, and I reaped the benefits from it. And my head got really big and it grew for a long time, and I thought I was untouchable, to the point where I was there were a lot of crooked people of high stature that were assisting me along with my disease. And I got away with a lot of stuff. And I think that's the worst thing for an addict, is for nothing to happen, right? For you to get away with it, because you continue to get this big head and you continue to do all these things thinking you're untouchable. And one day you will, come as a bitch.
Yeah, it's
you,
coming.
you will get that. And that happened to me. I had a career for 13 years spraying boats. I absolutely loved it. I went to a vocational school to do that. From there, I was painting until I was 32 years old. I painted a lot of famous people. I got a lot of recognition. Again, my head was huge. I had a big ego. I just thought I was like this badass girl on the Cape that painted boats and robbed drug dealers, and nobody could touch me. Nobody knew what was going on.
And you made a lot of money.
I did make a lot of money. And again, that was another bad setup for me, right? Because that wasn't a problem. Like, money wasn't an issue. I didn't know what it liked, unfortunately. When I finally started getting sick from my drug of choice, I didn't even realize that that was because I wasn't having my drug of choice anymore. Like, I just had it all the time. So I thought I really was just getting a cold. Eventually I did get caught and I got arrested, and they obviously wanted somebody bigger than me. And at that time, the street was so ingrained in me that I would rather take the wrath of the judge on the possession charge that I had than to set anybody up on the street. And that's what I did. And from there, I was told that I was going to be fired if I didn't go into treatment. I didn't even know what treatment was. I thought I was going to a psych ward. I had no idea that there was detox. I was actually given a tour for the local facility. And when I seen the menu, I was looking at the menu, all excited. I haven't eaten in years anything good. And when I seen the menu and got excited, I turned around and the person who was giving me the tour was gone. It was just me sitting there in a facility, getting ready to admit, and realize like my journey ahead of me, right? It all hit really, really hard that day. And I just kept telling myself, I'm just going to fly under the radar. It's 5 days. I'll get through this. I'll go back to my normal life and just continue to do what I'm doing. These people don't need to know. Half of them don't know my story. I kept myself very distant from a lot of people. The only reason why I really even feel my boss is the one. I worked a lot. I'm a workaholic. So my boss seen me the most. He's the only one that really had some sort of a hand of what was normal and what wasn't, and what sort of was going on in my life. So, I just said I was going to fly through the radar, blah, blah, blah. They ended up having an intervention without me and compared, my family and friends compared all the tidbit stories of everything that I had left or said at one point in time. And they basically formulated my story with facts and paperwork and proof. And my boss came into the detox to have a conversation with me. I remember it was just like the most humiliating day, like the biggest pit in my stomach, that I actually had to admit what I was using and how I was using it. That was like the horriblest feeling in the world, to somebody who's always been there and supported me and showed me. It was awful. And he told me that if I didn't go get further treatment, that I was not going to have a career in this industry ever again. And I remember that was like worse than any sentence. It felt like real jail time. I could hear those metal doors clicking shut. I was full of fear. I just wanted to leave. And I knew I could leave, but actually never thought it. Like, I never was like, I could just walk out these doors. Nobody's holding me. That never was a thought in my head. It was the weirdest thing. But hindsight, right now you look at it, you're like, wow, why didn't I leave? I knew where I was. I knew I had people locally that would come and get me. There was everything was there that I could just totally get up and leave, but I never once thought of that. And I think that's cool hindsight now, like something bigger than me was keeping me where I needed to be. Right. And I knew this is what I needed to do.
Yep.
And still just going through the motions, like, I'm just going to get through this 60 days. I can do this. And then again, the same thought process. It probably wasn't until a month of me being in the facility after detox that somebody from an H&I commitment It's called Hospitals and Institutions for NA. It's people who can't get out to meetings. These people go to facilities and they share the 12-step fellowship. Um, this girl, this young lady had a lot of trauma, a lot of abuse. She was this tough girl. It was very attractive. Like everything for me, like honesty, raw, and realness is what attracts me. I've seen a lot of stuff and I hear even more stuff. And people will regurgitate stuff all the time, but they don't put it into action. I need to see that action to believe that it works in order for me to make that a part of my process. And
This is
that's what
common human experience. That's not uncommon. Yep. We got to see it. We don't want you to just hear people talking. We
oh
want to
yeah,
see that this actually works.
correct. And was at that moment I really felt that. I heard it. I with every sense of me. Every sense was it was all spewing like that girl. I could see her. That was that little girl Angie, helpless, begging for help when she was a little girl. That was what was sitting in front of me that day at the facility. And I actually got the courage to go up to her and talk to her. And she was like, why are you here? And of course, I just run off my spiel. I'll get caught with charges. I'm not like these girls trying to be all cool and city. And she's like, no, really, why are you here? You could leave right now. Like, you don't need to be here, right? That's what you're telling me. So why are you here? And I was like, because I'm broken, because I'm sad, because I want to be you and I don't know how. And she was like, stay, listen to the 12 steps of NA and give it a chance. If it sucks, you can always go back to the streets. They'll always be there. Your friends, everything, it's always going to be there. So why not give it a shot? If it sucks, leave. And it's so simple and broken down to me like that, that I was like, it was almost like an aha moment, like that light bulb literally went off like, okay. And then I started like really trying to believe in and invest in foster change and happiness. And I really did it for real the last month that I was there. I ended up moving into a sober house where I ended up living for 8 years. I saved every single penny. I got myself out of $30,000 of debt. I've listened to every rule. I ended up being a manager. I enforced all those rules. I did them all with them and to gain the respect of the women. And we did it all together as a team. And then I was able to actually buy my own first house this year. I've lived in here for a year now. And things are going good. I'm still navigating different luxury problems is what I like to call them every day, utilizing my tools. Like the 12 step doesn't go away. I'm not cured. I still have to go to meetings. I still have to keep myself connected in the community. And I still have to insert myself everywhere that I don't feel comfortable inserting myself until I do. And that's what I do every single day. Like, I believe in this stuff. It's good. It's happened to me, and I will do anything to share my story or do whatever it takes to share this hope, to let them know that, it works for anybody who wants to apply it, and I think that's the key. It's when do we really want to apply it?
Right. When are you ready?
When are you ready to even accept the denial and the chaos to be able to remove and move forward, right?
Right. Right. And I see this every day in your work. I mean, you really have an ability to connect with people. And I think a lot of what you said is really important. The primary audience today is mostly families and families who are trying to figure out how to help their loved one. And there were a couple things you said that I really want to touch on.
Mhm.
One was you can't keep getting all your needs met because you're never going to stop,
No.
right? And this is something that you and I both know family members struggle with every day. I struggled with it personally when I was going through it. As family members, we want to get in there and we want to fix and we want to save, and we think we can love them out of it. And if I just make him or her as comfortable as possible, and he or she doesn't have anything to worry about, then they're not going to need to use. And is that how it works?
No,
No.
no, no, we're not going to help ourselves until we actually know we're in hot water and we need to. We are going to use and manipulate everybody else to help and it's not even, I don't even think it's a thing that we do on purpose. Like, we don't know that we're consciously doing it. I think we've been doing it for so long. Like, we'll just call people and be like, throw stuff out there. Hey, can you do this? Do you know how to do this? And all of a sudden we're just giving them all our stuff to do. And we're just sitting back reaping the benefits, when you put in the work for something, it means something more to you and you hold value to it. You know, and I like to tell people it's like the first car you get, right? When mom buys your first car, do you care to know when you need an oil change or when your fluids are low or anything like that? But if you spent the 5-10 grand on your car, you bet your ass you're gonna
Yep.
figure out how to take care of it, and because you
Yep.
don't lose it, right?
Right.
And it goes like that with everything, every aspect of recovery.
Mhm. And I'm gonna also just throw out there for those of you out there that don't struggle with substance use, we have this issue too. So, like for me, I'm not gonna lose weight until my jeans are too tight, right? I first have to be uncomfortable in my pants before I go, oh, maybe I should stop eating cake, right? So this is basic human nature, is that we first have to be uncomfortable before we make a change. As long as we're comfortable, we're going to continue to do whatever it is that we're doing, especially if it feels good. I just had a long talk last night in my spousal support group that I run how about how when we go off and we make our loved ones as comfortable as possible doing what we said, it only prolongs the issue, and then it also causes resentment for us, right? So was it your boss, Angie, that first was able to sort of put the boundaries?
Yes. Yep.
That's what it sounds like.
Yep, he was the one, and, like, the only thing that I think, and he knew it was the only thing that really worked. It's like I said, I was a workaholic. I from 18, almost 18 to 32, I worked at this place. At least 50 hours was the bare minimal that I've ever worked, and that he's helped me in so many ways. He's not just a boss. I call him, he's like a father to me. He was my first real positive male figure, that like he's the one that taught me like how to budget, how to moral support, everything, literally all this stuff that you think you learned from your family growing up. I learned that throughout the times of working with him. And he knew that literally that was like, I think he knew like that was literally the only thing that would even get me to like listen to anybody or anything. It's like, you're not going to have a job. What? That like crushed my soul,
Right.
crushed it.
Because that was part of your identity at the time.
It was
And
my only identity. I was living on a friend's couch at the time. So they couldn't kick me out. They couldn't take away my car. They couldn't take away my phone. I was very independent. I surfed on people's couches. The only thing I had left was my career.
Mhm. And I'm guessing that was such a part of your identity, it was probably the only thing that you really felt good about at
Oh, yeah.
that moment. You
Yeah.
didn't like yourself at all. And this is another really important piece, because I hear this from family members, and I know you do too. Well, he or she can't go to treatment because they have this job that they're going to lose, right? And sometimes that's what needs to happen, is it the recovery needs to come first. It needs to come before anything else, because the
Mhm.
job's going anyways. If you had continued on that path, were you going to have your job?
Yep. And the funny thing is, right? After when I did get clean, I did go back to work for 2 years,
Mhm.
and that made me realize with a sound mind that I love this. This is awesome, but it's not really meant for me. This isn't a healthy career for me. And I was able to figure that out, being able to go back and having that privilege to go back and go to work and do it 2 years sober. After 2 years, I had to seek out a different career because it just wasn't healthy for me.
Right. I also want to talk about, and by the way, just throwing it out there, please, we're looking for questions. So if you're on Facebook, put your questions right in the comment. If you're on Zoom, put them right in the Q&A box. We love questions. We'd love to answer them. Feel free to, ask specific questions to your situation. Just don't put any identifying information in there. The other important piece is how you moved towards treatment, because oftentimes I hear family members will be like, well, they're either trying to run the show, right? And you know this, either family members like, well, this is what you need to do, and that's it. And we're not, and if you don't, that's it, right? Or they're in the opposite, where they're like, well, you can't really go because of X, Y, or Z, right? And how would you say, like, what's the best way for a family member to navigate that? Because oftentimes they don't even know what to do. Like, how do you navigate those two things? Because I think the answer is somewhere in the middle, right?
I try not to get distracted at all with a loved one or anybody else thinks of what they should do or what they should not do. They tried this or they tried that. I try to block out all of that insight and just speak directly with the client. about the current situation, and then like lighten up a little bit, like, hey, maybe what have you experienced with, have you been to different treatment centers, or have you been to this before, what has that felt like to you, and then get a sense of like how things work for them, and see, there's so many different processes of different 12-step fellowships, and different approaches that we're starting to learn there's no black and white set in stone one way to
Right.
be in recovery. And I really feel that removing all of the thoughts and all of the old ideas out of my head and starting fresh on a blank piece of paper and connecting one to one with that individual and just sharing a connection and experience and seeing what is really fitting. And it's not like, oh, I think that this is best. It's almost like we're formulating their journey together on the phone, is how I can say it. I'm not like, oh, no, you need to go to this house or this tree. You need 12 steps, or no, you need acupuncture. I have no idea. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a doctor. I am a person in recovery. I know what's worked for me. I've heard a lot of suggestions. I've took a lot of suggestions. I've given a lot of suggestions. I've applied a lot. And all I'm doing is thinking with a client and keeping an open mind, and that person and I are formulating a journey that works for them to the best of our abilities and doing it together.
And that right there, folks, is the reason why we shouldn't be doing this for our loved ones, because we can't. A
Yeah.
yeah, a family member cannot do that. One of my family members shared with me something she says in her head to herself when she feels like she wants to step in and fix everything, and it's hands off pays off. And I think that should be our mantra, because the more we can take just take the back seat, right, and work on ourselves, work on our own reactions, and figure out what we need, because we concentrate so much on what they need, right, that all we're doing is pushing them further away, and also giving them a person to come to fix, right? So we need to figure out what we need. And this doesn't necessarily mean I need you to leave my house, but it can, right? It's all where you're at and what you need, what you want in your life. But you got to learn what a boundary is, how to set them, what enabling means. I hate that word, but it's the only word we really have, right? What am I doing that's contributing and making it easier for my loved one to continue to use, right? And it's usually the opposite of what we think. So when we can get somebody like an Angie in our loved ones' lives, right? Before that, it's life and death. Maybe we need to be involved a little bit more. Once we get somebody that can walk alongside them, we got to back off, right?
Mhm.
Does that make your job easier, Ange?
It does. I love telling the parents about my bike analogy, right? Somebody in recovery is just like the little boy or the little girl that you're trying to put on the bike for the first time. You're holding the seat, you're letting your kid pedal, you're excited to let go, and you know in your brain when you let go that your kid's probably gonna face plant. You're going to pick them up. You're going to laugh and giggle and make a fun experience, and you're going to get him back on the bike. And you're not going to push him around for the rest of his life or keep him on training wheels. You're going to let go and let him ride the bike and figure it out and figure out his own process. Right. And I love that. And that's how I say it to the parents. Like, we can be there to support and guide and watch the good and the bad, but we cannot do it with them. We can't.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's their story.
And we can't decide what we think is best,
No.
right? Because here's one thing I know, and I'm the mother of a 15-year-old boy he's growing up, and I myself am trying to figure out how I need to take my own advice, because this is a struggle, right? But one thing I know is that what makes me happy is not necessarily what makes him happy. So I can't assume that I know what he needs. It needs to be a dialogue. It's okay if you think your loved one should go to treatment. Absolutely. But it shouldn't be, you need to do this and that's it. It needs to be a dialogue. How's your life? How do you feel about yourself? Right? How do you feel like, what are the things you're struggling with? What's the reason? Right? More of a question, more of a discussion, not us always telling them what they need.
Mm-hmm.
We have a question. How do you support someone who is a chronic relapser? That's that's pretty much
We
what
do.
we work with, you guys. Like, we work with mostly people who, I know Angie is one of the few who had like a one and done. It doesn't happen very often. Most of the time, I think they say the average is about 7 times. And I mean, we work with people who have been 40 times in and out. So what are your thoughts on that, Ange?
So there's a lot of chronic relapsers, and I give them a lot of credit. And I find it very powerful and inspiring to see them, no matter what, keep standing up. And I love boxing. I love discipline. It's a good outlet for me, and it always reminds me of this, right? You fight and fight and fight and fight, and sometimes you lose that fight, but you're still getting back up and you're still trying. And I always, we all, everybody, right? What you're always going to support, like the kid that falls off the bike. Are you going to be like, you're on your own, you're on your own, good luck, go ride, you figure it out? Or are you going to be like, come on, get back on the bike, let's try it again? So you're just loving from a distance. You're keeping an open mind. Not everybody is going to believe or do or have the morals that you have, and everybody's story is different. Everybody process is different. Maybe somebody needs to experience. I always say that you're not losing your knowledge, you're gaining more experience, you're gaining more strength. There's a reason why things happen to us, and there's a lesson to be learned. If you don't ignore that, you stand up, you accept it, you take it for who it is, and you stand up strong and you get back on the horse. Of course, we're going to continue to encourage and help and guide you and listen and support. We're always going to be here. Are we going to throw thousands of dollars and spoil and enable these people every single time? It's okay. We're just going to pay for detox every time? No. But you know what? It's okay. What did you learn from this? What it needed to be done here? What are we going to do to change? What's the turnaround? How are we going to handle this differently? It's all about knowledge and moving forward.
Right. And it's hard for loved ones to do this. So I want to acknowledge that, because you love somebody and they could die. And that is something we always have to name. So I was just working with a woman yesterday whose husband had I think it was 60 days sober, maybe a little more, and he had a relapse over the holidays, right? Big trigger for a lot of families. It's really based in his relationship with his daughter. He was triggered. He went out and he drank on and off for 3 days and then said, this isn't who I want to be, and got back into recovery. And now is actually doing the 12 steps where previously he wasn't. So I want to throw it out there because she came saying to me, it's over. He relapsed. It's done. Right.
Mm.
And I think you and I both know that's not true, that these relapses, if your loved one is able to stand back up, like you said, I love that analogy, and try again, that is huge. And we have to celebrate that and try not to focus so much on the slip, because the brain's sick. This is not somebody, this isn't, I mean, how do we know that this is a disease and this is an illness? Human nature is you stick your hand in the fire once and you never do it again, right? I mean, how many times do our loved ones, the people we're working with, stick their hands in the fire? How many times did you stick your hand in the fire, and only to get burned to stick it right back in?
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So relapse is a part of this. And I don't want it to always be a part of this. I don't. I want someday for us not to have to say relapse is a part of that. But the whole system's going to need an overhaul before we get there. Right. So at this point, relapse is a part of it. And I think the less we can do, oh, you screwed up again. Look at you. That's just feeding the disease. It's
Negative
just,
talk is bad. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just making them want to pull back. And
Mhm.
you are afraid. When your loved one is doing this, you're afraid. That's the thing that we're not afraid. We might be sad and we might be scared for your loved one, but it's not the same level as it is for you. So in your fear, you're having anger and resentment and all of these things, right? So I often say this is our work. It's
Mhm.
my work to manage my fear and not take it out on my loved one, right? And acknowledge the fact that this is hard. People like Angie to me are heroes, because I know the neurology behind this disease professionally, and I've seen what it does to people, and it's friggin' hard to
Mhm.
stop. Like hard, like you got to fight your own brain,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So this is hard work.
Mhm.
Right. So I just like always want to throw that out there, that we got to try not to perpetuate the stigma and perpetuate the fact that they suck, and acknowledge how hard this is. And I know you want to say something, so go ahead.
No, I was thinking, when like, how would I be if, like, a loved one, if I was a loved one or something like that, right? And the family member keeps relapsing. I guess the best way to, or the best thing you could ask yourself is like, you're not a mechanic, right? If your loved one has a car that broke down, would you go and try to fix the car, or would you give them a referral to a good mechanic, right? Like, you're not a doctor, you're not any of these specialties, you're a loved one that loves somebody, you see that person dying. The most you can do is ask open-ended questions and guide them to the right resources so that the appropriate people can handle the situation.
Yep, absolutely. And I have a similar analogy that I use, except I use cancer because I feel like we're entering into a world at this point where addiction is just as deadly as cancer. So if the doctors were telling your loved one they needed chemo, would you support them in not getting chemo?
Mhm.
Probably not, right? So it's much easier, I feel like, with substance use disorder for us to say, oh, well, he said he's going to stop, or she said she's going to stop. So I think she can. She needs to get back to work, right? But that's not the reality of it. And especially if you've tried that and it hasn't worked. So you got to start to support something different and not tell your loved one what to do, but keep saying, but that didn't work. So you got to try something different. What's that going to be? Why don't you call Angie and have a conversation with her? You don't have to make any decisions today. Just
Mhm.
call her, right? Just call Herren Project. Just call Magnolia New Beginnings or whoever the resources are in your community. Call them, just encourage them to call. We do have another question, Ange. Can you talk in more detail about how HP walks with people on their journeys?
Sure. So, as we discussed, a client would talk to me directly about their current situation, and it's more of a connection. I don't feel like it's some type of therapeutic or, an assessment that you would do going into a detox. It's literally like just the both of us getting comfortable, finding out the ins and outs and the facts of the current situation, and what their idea of treatment looks like to them, or what their idea of help looks like to them. um I'm sorry, I'm so distracted. Well,
How do we walk alongside them?
how do we walk along? So once we start talking and doing all of that, maybe the person doesn't need to go to treatment. Maybe the person doesn't need sober living. Maybe the person thinks that helping them looks like recovery coaching support, or maybe a family support group, or our recovery group. We're gonna stay connected, stay like half these clients are texting my work phone all day long. We wrap around with recovery coaching support. We wrap around with nightly recovery groups. um, if they are in treatment, they are signing a release. I am speaking with their counselors, making sure they're showing up for groups, that they're feeling okay, that they're still going in the direction that they want to go in, and making sure that things are going good. We're always asking for letters and things like that. And then once they progress to the next, well, we're still following along with counselors into sober, and then into sober living with recovery coaching. Um, extending supports as needed. They're also allowed into our alumni groups after they complete their, so they're around and they're with us and they're family and they know it, and they're always helping us, excited to help us give back and be a part of the community. Um, but yeah, that's how we walk alongside with our clients.
Yep. We're always here. I think one of the things from my perspective as a clinician that you guys doing the work on the front lines do really well is not being judgmental. And our people are so used to being judged. Sometimes it's even by treatment facilities
Mhm.
because they've been tough to work with, right? And I get that and I get why that happens, but they've been judged so much. We are in a unique position to be able to not judge, right?
Mhm.
Not judge the journey. Nothing they do is negatively affecting us, right? So, of course, we put boundaries around people, right? But they can always come back. We're always going to help them find a safe place to go. We might not pay for it, like you
Yeah.
said, right? But we'll always help them find it.
Yeah. And we're not afraid to call them out on their behaviors and their things and hold them accountable. And that's another, right? You want to talk about walking along. I've had clients that have been placed for a little bit now, that if I hear something in the community, I'll call them out. I'll be like, hey, what's going on? Remember when you told me that you desperately wanted this and now you have it? What's this look like? Like, what's going on? Let's talk about this. So that's another way we walk along with them. Like, it's not like an easy, naive little walk, like let's just hear what the client wants, and no, we're hearing what you want, but we're seeing the action, and we're going to call you out on your stuff because we're family and we care about you, and we are going to walk with you for a long time, and we're going to walk together, and we're going to do it healing, not broken.
Right. And this is another area where it's so important that as family members, we step back, because we can't do that. Because if I'm going to tell you right now, if I said some of the things to my ex-husband that Angie's able to say to the clients she works with, he would be in a fight, would be arguing. Right. But you are a peer, and they see you as a peer. They see you as a non-judgmental person. They know you've struggled. They know you get it. So you can call them up and you can say stuff that other people, especially family members, can't.
Yeah, I love it. I'll say they'll be like, "Don't you know how big I am?" And it to be honest, like, no, I don't. I've never even seen you in my entire life. I'm speaking to you on a phone. The most I know is your voice. That's all I know.
And I've heard this, and it's hysterical to me, but I mean, a lot of our people, they appreciate honesty, but it has to be in the right circumstances, right?
Mhm.
So the more you can kind of step back as a family member and let someone like Angie take the lead, the better the outcome usually is. And then you go get yourself work, right? That's another really important piece, is that family members, we have to go work on ourselves. I know I say that all the time. I'm a broken record. I'm going to continue to say it. That's why Herren Project offers support groups for us when we're feeling that anxiety. And this is something that is as hard, I think, for a lot of family members to understand, but our anxiety is not your loved one's job, right? So even though they're making poor decisions, absolutely. Even though you're scared, absolutely. I get it. It makes sense. I understand why we're behaving the way that we are. But what we're doing is trying to force them into making us feel less anxious and more comfortable. And that's not their job. So we have to take a step back and deal with that ourselves and learn to be uncomfortable and anxious, but also allow them to make their own choices. And
Mhm.
this doesn't mean enable. Those are two different things. That's why this is so hard. That's why you need support, because there is so much gray in this. It's not black and white. I also wanted to point out that one of the things you talked about in your own journey was how important one person was,
Mm.
right? And this is something that I hear time and time and time again when it comes to people's recovery journeys. And oftentimes I'll have people who are starting their journey say to me, "Oh, I don't like AA." Right? AA doesn't work for me. How many times have we heard that, Ange? Right?
Mhm.
Or treatment doesn't work for me, or whatever it is. I don't like this center because the food sucks, or the bed's uncomfortable, or whatever it is that the problem is. Right? And I
Mhm.
always say to them, just find your person. And it can be another client. It can be, find your person, right? Find someone to inspire you. And it sounds like that's what happened to you, but also that's what you're trying to be for people,
Yeah.
right?
When I was in treatment, I just kept comparing myself to everybody else, like looking at these people and like, oh, I'm not them. I'll never come back here again. I didn't get caught doing this. This isn't my story. I don't need to be here. It wasn't until I stopped comparing and I identified with that girl's feelings. And you hear that a lot in the program, right? And I did. I identified with her feelings and I stopped comparing and looked at it. Was the way I was perceiving everything. I was resistant. I didn't want it. I didn't think it was going to work for me. Of course, I thought the same thing, like that this is a cult. This is crazy. They're making me chant these sayings and pray and hold hands and circle up. I remember saying all of this stuff, any negative stuff I could.
Mhm.
Um, but it wasn't until I had an open mind and had a connection with a feeling until I was able ready to admit that I'm here for my wrongdoings and this is what I want to fix and work on for myself.
Right. Yep. Right. And it sounds like that's what you're doing with people, is you're trying to speak truth to them. You're trying to use your own experience to speak truth to them. And I've seen it work. Right. And again, this is why we need to let other people do the work with our loved ones, and we need to try to just be mom, or just be dad, or just be wife or husband or child, or whatever your relationship is, friend, right? And I've actually seen Anne struggle with this with friends. So
Yeah.
and I, even as a clinician, like I said earlier, I struggled with this with my son when he tried marijuana. It was really hard for me to take a step back and recognize what my place was. I wanted to do the control and all of that, right? And that's, you experienced that too, Angie.
Fear and denial are a bitch.
Yeah.
That's all I can say, right? And there's been so many people that are close to me that relapse, and I feel like I fell right into that family role. Like, I am
Mhm.
going to save this person, I'm going to be able to do this, and you just forget all your tools, and you care about that person so much that you just want to do whatever is in your brain to save that person. It's normal. It's a normal reaction. We are human.
Yep.
What we need to do is be aware of that and be mindful of that and have healthy people around us that can say, hey, Kristin, hey, Angie, you're doing it again. And to sit back and look at the facts and let somebody else help you handle the situation, right? You're
Yep.
not the key player in this. Like, think of it as an army, right? That's not, you're not the soldier for that task. And that's okay. Step back and let your army help you.
Find people you trust. And that's one of the reasons, one of the things I like about Herren Project is that you guys can come in, get to know who we are, learn to trust us. And then when your loved one really needs something, give them our phone number,
Mhm.
right? Instead of having to jump in yourself. We have another question. What should someone look for in a treatment center?
I mean, and this is a hard one for me because, like, I didn't go shopping for a treatment center. I was at the end of my road, and to be honest with you, even if I did, if I at the time, I like I said, I thought it was like a mental ward thing that I was going to. At that time, I don't believe that there's a shopping for treatment. I think if you need treatment and you're desperate enough, like, you just go to wherever has availability that can help you. Yeah, it's great if you have money and great resources and you want to go to a place with more amenities and all that. That's all great, but literally, I don't feel like anybody should be shopping around for anything. Where it's almost like saying, what hospital do you prefer we go get your heart surgery done at? Just get it done. It's open heart surgery and it needs to be done. That's how I
Where
feel.
where it's an emergency situation, absolutely.
I mean,
And I do.
it's a privilege, and it's great if you have those resources and things. And I get, if it were me and I had that privilege and I had to think about it, I would want something with a 12-step base, abstinent based program, because that's just what worked for me,
Yeah.
right? But
And I think that it also probably depends. And one of the things that we do assess here is mental health, right? If somebody has a major, now I'm just want to clarify this. I've yet to meet anybody who has substance use disorder that also does not have some struggles mental health wise, right? They come hand in hand. Mental health is the foundation typically that the substance use is built off of, right? The substance use is a symptom. It's not the problem. Oftentimes we focus on it as the problem. It's not. The 12-step model will tell you that right off the rip, right? That's not the problem. However, there are people who have more complicated mental health issues. So that is a little bit more important to put some time and effort in. Also, depending on where you live, making sure they're reputable treatment centers. So making sure that you ask around a little bit because there is some brokerage going on. There are people profiting off of substance use disorder. I think we're getting better at being able to see them as a culture and to call them out, and it's getting safer, but that still is an issue. So, ask around a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's not really our job to find treatment for our loved one. It's not. It's theirs. And I'm not going to say if your loved one's actively using to make them, find the treatment center. No, but there are services like us that will assist them in finding reputable treatment. There's also, the Detox is really the place to start for
I was
that. And
gonna
then
say,
talking to the Detox about where to go next, right? Because they always have to start at Detox. There really isn't, this isn't like there's a place that's going to save your loved one. Unfortunately, the person that's going to save your loved one is your loved one. Right, Ange?
yep, yep. I
Did
mean, I
a
think
job.
the main thing, right? First of all, is the detox. When everybody has so many different, again, there's, sexual identity, your insurance type, what you're actually going in. There's so many variables that getting into detox, now you're in detox, you're getting detox, you're getting healed. Now those, at least those urgent needs are met, and now there's a case manager there that's working with you and counseling you while you're there to be able to work on a formula for recovery. you would listen to that case manager who's in care with you, that is experienced, to move on to the next treatment center.
Yep.
You know, and to me, like, you just get your butt to detox and let God do the work from there. Like, let's not be choosy in shopping. It's an emergency, and let God do its work. Just put your foot in the detox door, please.
Right. And I think from my perspective, what's way more important for us as loved ones is to try to keep them there as long as we can and not support the BS that this isn't the right place. I want to come home. The food's not good. It's usually this that isn't good. Right. And you heard Ange say that when she was talking about it, she was just going to be there for 5 days and leave until she couldn't because it wasn't supported by her loved ones. So then she ended up there for 60 days, 30 days before she stopped thinking, I'm just going to get this over with and get back out and go back to my life.
Yep.
Right. So, and I'm going to guess there was all kinds of manipulative ways you tried to figure out how to be able to get out. Right. And I always, I always tell the family members I'm working with, be prepared for the phone call, because inevitably you're going to get a phone call that says that this place sucks. And I'm not saying sometimes it isn't a little bit true. So make the phone calls you need to make, do a visit, make sure, but 9 times out of 10, it's BS, because this is sick, this is uncomfortable, and this wants out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and I had all those excuses. I have a career, I have a house, I have all these responsibilities, I can't be here. And the one thing that I can remember is that my loved ones, all they did is set the boundary and say, you cannot go to work if you do not get long-term treatment. They didn't tell me what specifically long-term. They didn't even know what long-term treatment looked like. They probably just learned that word. All they knew is that I was not going back to work with them if I didn't get longer help. When I came back, well, what am I supposed to do? I don't know. Angie, you're an adult and you need to figure it out. I'm just telling you, you cannot work unless you have further treatment. They didn't dictate where, what, how, nothing. That was up to me to figure out. I just had to get it done in order to come back. That's it.
Yep. And this is where we really come in, is to be able to say to them, and I always suggest not saying anything other than go talk to your treatment providers. They're the ones, that you need, not me. I'm not picking you up until I get a call from your counselor, your case manager that says you're ready to be picked up. So you go and you figure that out with your team. And when you're ready, then have them call me and we'll come up with a discharge plan, right? Put it back on the team. That's what they're there for.
Yep.
And then keeping them in as long as possible, also another really important factor, right? Like, so Ange, do you think that it's beneficial when somebody comes out of 30 days of treatment to go right back to their home environment?
No, never go
How-
back to what you left.
How come?
Move forward, please move forward. That didn't work, right?
Yep.
When they told me in recovery, everything needs to change but your name, like, I took that literally. Everything changed. I don't even hang out with people that were safe friends that I grew up with in this town, because it is a brain disease and there are a lot of little weird triggers that happen that I can't control. Sometimes I feel really strong and nothing happens. And then other times it's like, holy shit, I'm feeling vulnerable today. And that one hit me hard. Wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep. It's a really important piece. When we look even at Chris Herren, he was out of his home for almost a year. It was 11 months total. And he had just had a new baby. So they're really, to me, no matter what excuse your loved one is trying to come up, and no matter how valid it is, because it is valid. I have children. I get it. It's valid. However, what kind of parent are you going to be for your children if you don't put your disease first, right? This is important. Ask yourself the following. If this was cancer and the doctor was saying you need to be here for 11 months or a year, and your loved one was saying, no, I have kids, I have to get home to them, would you sign off on that? Right? Because if you say no to that, you should say the same exact thing when it comes to substance use disorder. We have 2 questions. What about co-occurring disorders like depression and anxiety? Can any treatment center work for that? They should be able to, because I have yet to meet somebody who struggles with substance use disorder that doesn't struggle with depression and anxiety. They're part of the disease. Even if there wasn't trauma prior, there's probably been trauma that's occurred during the use. So there's PTSD. And on top of that, the self-hatred that comes along with the choices that you make when you're using, it creates anxiety and depression. So any treatment facility should be able to manage anxiety and depression because they are literally a part of the disease.
Yes.
Another one, you hear a lot about hiring a person for case management after treatment. Is that worth the cost? Luckily you don't need to because we're here. Right, Ange? That's what we do, and we do it for free.
Yep.
Yep, you don't have to do that. We're not the only ones out there that are doing it. But all I can speak to when it comes to us is that we're not taking any money. And I always need to make sure that this is said out loud. We don't take money from the treatment facilities. If the treatment facility is close to us and think we're doing great work, they might run a race for us, like the Falmouth Road Race, to raise funds, but they raise funds just like the rest of our donors. We are 100% funded by donations. And we don't get any kickbacks from anybody, and everything we do is free. We're lucky enough that people love and trust Chris, and have also, I think at this point, even above and beyond how great Chris is, our work speaks for ourselves. So a lot of people trust and love us, and we're lucky enough to be able to do that. So you're going to call us, or your loved one's going to call us, and we've vetted out all these treatment facilities. Typically, like Angie and I did one not too long ago, we go together. Angie will assess the treatment facility from the standpoint of somebody who's in recovery, and I will assess it from a clinical perspective. And then we'll determine whether or not the treatment facility is somebody that we want to send people to. So I'm not going to say we never send anybody to a treatment facility that we haven't been to. That only happens in extreme circumstances when there's nowhere else to send the person. And we always make sure that we know somebody that we trust that has had boots on the ground in that facility. But 90% of the time, the places we send people to are places we've been to ourselves. Anything to add on that, Ange?
I'm sorry, you went out. You
Oh,
ran.
I just said anything to add.
No, I think you covered that one pretty good.
Yeah. So we're doing all that work for you if you use us. And I'm not just trying to do this as a plug for us. There are other groups that are doing similar things, but again, I really love everybody that works for Herren Project is here because we really, really believe in this work and believe in the mission. And again, I think our work speaks for itself when it comes to that. So if you're looking for a case manager, please don't pay tons of money for one. Just give us a ring and we'll be happy to help. The only difference I can say is I'm not sure how a paid case manager will work, but they're probably going to spend a lot more time planning treatment with you without your loved one's consent, and we won't do that. And why won't we do that, Ange?
Not allowed.
Yeah, how come?
I mean, you just can't, like, it's private information. We gotta work on boundaries with our clients as well, right? And the parents need to go to their school and go to family support. And if there's any advice or resources that they may need, that's why we have the one-on-one consultations or the peer-to-peer group support, where somebody else has been in that group that is gone through what you've gone through, and they can explain what worked best for them. And we do the same with the addicts, and it just makes it more so you guys can be loved ones and not the cops, and we can be a friend and guide the person in recovery. Just having that experience and that connection one-on-one, we've actually been through it. We know what we're going through. Our PTS, our trauma, our fears are a lot different. We perceive things a lot differently. We're going to connect more and relate better, right? And that's what's going to get to the core in order to formulate a successful plan for them. And that's exactly how it works with family support with loved ones, just in a different.
Yep. So if you call up and you're looking to find a treatment facility for your loved one, we're going to say, how about you have your loved one call me? I'm here, right? And you can trust that we will do everything to help your loved one get where they need to go. And we're probably going to suggest you reach out to the family program and do some work yourself. Because one thing that we know is if we found this out very early on, if I'm talking to a parent or a spouse, and I'm arranging everything with the spouse, I become for a lot of people now, the loved one who's struggling, they don't trust me because I'm there for their loved one. not for them. So that's one reason why. And also, I found a lot of treatment facilities over the years for people that never went. Right. And and it's basically because the family really wanted them to go, but they themselves didn't. So, and our people, Angie's talked about this a lot. The people that we have are awesome, and they're going to hang in there with your loved one and keep having conversations with them to try to move them towards wanting it, which is way more beneficial. It's a way better use of their time than to have conversations with you and find treatment facilities that no one's ever going to go to.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
So, okay. Well, this was awesome. Ange, thank you so much for being on today. Anything else you want to add, talk about?
Nope. I just hope everybody has a safe, calm, sound holidays.
Yes.
You know, there's a lot of things that just have very low expectations and enjoy yourself and your loved ones.
Yep. Absolutely. Okay. Thank you, Ange.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. We'll see you next month.